Yeah? Yeah?
I don't know if you guys have been there, but that was the plan. And then what happened is obviously the house smelled like fire. And so the problem became, well, now what do you do? I'm ashamed to say that I had my stepdad crawling around the attic thinking maybe there's a fire in the attic because I was not going to say what happened. And so so sometimes when you misuse objects, they get out of control really quickly. Fire is like that. For thousands of years we've used fire for warmth, we used it for light sometimes. You use it to make things smell nicer. When used as a tool, fire is fantastic. When misused, fire gets out of control really quickly. You see forest fires, we see all kinds of different fires. And when we misuse something, it gets out of control quick. The same is true of money. You know, over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about God and money. And when we misuse money, money gets out of control really quick. As a tool for God's purposes, money is fantastic, right? It enables us, it helps us, it does all of these things. But when we misuse money pretty quickly, no matter how much money we have, we are spiraling out of control, much like a forest fire. You know, as I was reading about fires this morning, I realized there is a fire in a town called Centralia, Pennsylvania. I don't know if you guys have ever heard this. There is a fire underground in a mine that has been burning since the 60s. This town is abandoned now. The ground gets to about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit because this fire just keeps burning and burning, and they had to empty out the town because the fire got so out of control. And as it would burn all these coal deposits, the ground would create sinkholes because now there's a vacuum, and it looks post-apocalyptic. It looks like if you walk through this town, you're not supposed to walk through the town anymore. They closed it off finally. But if you walk through this town, there's steam rising up from the ground, and the buildings are all abandoned, and there's graffiti everywhere, and it looks like this terrible post-apocalyptic kind of life. And I thought to myself, how do you burn a fire for upwards of 50 or 60 years? And it's projected to go for another 30. I would think fire department, something, you could put this out, but for whatever reason, this fire can't go out. And there's two reasons that the fire doesn't go out, and one is that there's limited access because the fire's underground in multiple mine shafts, and you can't get down there because it's 1,000 degrees or 1,300 degrees, or that spot's just wild and out of control. And because there's nearly unlimited fuel because of all the coal. And so this fire just burns and it burns, and it became easier for the town to abandon this town than it is to put out the fire. When we let money become our master in life and not our servant, money gets out of hand just as easily. Like, I don't know where everybody stands. I don't know where we stand with credit card debt or anything like that, but money gets out of hand very quickly. And when it gets out of hand, it becomes almost insurmountable to come back. And that's why God says that we can't serve two masters. That we need to put checks on the way that we use our money. It's a dangerous tool. But just like in a coal mine, or that coal mine specifically, there's a couple of things that happen in our hearts and in our minds when we use money or when we misuse money. You see, just like a coal mine, our hearts are difficult to access. If we're being honest with ourselves, our hearts are difficult to use and to understand. You see, Matthew chapter 6, verse 21 says this. It says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will also be." Jesus is giving advice to this person who wants to go to heaven, but is also wealthy and has amassed wealth. And Jesus says, where your heart or where your treasure is, that's where your heart is. And if we serve money, if money is our master, then our hearts become focused on money. They become focused on what money gets us, on the objects, on the things. And that when we do that, we forget the depths of our hearts. You see, because it's easy when we don't have money to say, well, I don't need a lot, right? For instance, growing up, an Arizona iced tea is one of my favorite treats. It's 99 cents. That's my little splurge. It's 99 cents. You can come up with 99 cents or whatever it is, right? But the problem is when we have money, money amplifies things that go on in our lives. It amplifies things that are deep in our hearts. Because when you grow up and you have a budget and life is what it is, then 99 cents is a nice little splurge. But if you somehow get, say, $1,000, all of a sudden you have options. All of a sudden you want everything, right? Where 99 cents in Arizona becomes a great splurge, all of a sudden, could use some new shoes, maybe a new TV for the house. That would be cool. The kids could use new stuff, new bed, you know. The missus wants new dishes or a picture or something. Go out to the movies, go out to dinner, and all of a sudden, $1,000, which would seem insurmountable, becomes this easy to spend thing. Because money is not good or evil, but it is amoral, and what happens is it amplifies the things that we allow into our hearts. It takes things where normally it's not a big deal, but all of a sudden with the options, where do we stand? What has been revealed to us? See, we must take caution to store up our treasures in heaven, and then our heart will be there too. And then no matter the options, no matter how much money comes and goes, then our eyes are always fixed on God. Because if we allow our hearts to be tainted by money, then we will always be chasing money. Always. And I want to be clear before we continue too far. I'm talking about extras. I'm not talking about saying, hey, I want to follow God, not money, so I'm going to sell my house and just God will figure it out, right? I'm talking about all of the extra things that we do in our day-to-day lives and where we end up spending extra money. Whether it's going out to eat more than we should, whether it's gas station stops. I know that's a big one sometimes when you're like, it's $3 at the gas station, it's $4, but 5 days a week, it starts to add up, all of a sudden you're spending $100 a month. Whatever it looks like, there's extras that we build into our lives. For some of us, there's more extras. For some of us, there's less. But in any event, are we allowing our hearts to go to God first or to the extra things in our budget first? Because that's where money gains control in our lives. That's where it stops being about how can I use funds for God and more about that's where my heart now is. Whether we think in those terms or not, that's what God is saying to us. This month, we're doing something that we call the month of giving, and we are raising above and beyond for missions, for other local churches, and for helping restore our church, and all these things going on. And it's really about the extras. Red and Tiffany were here last week, and they gave this presentation about maybe going out to eat one less day, maybe getting one less Dutch Bros or one less Starbucks or whatever that looks like, or saving a little bit here and there, and that adds up. And that's really where we determine whether or not God is in control or money is in control of our lives. Because if God is in control, then we use money to better what God is doing and calling us to do. And if God is not in control, if money is in control, then we tell ourselves, I just don't have enough to give this month. I don't have any extra in my budget. Or I would love to, but I'm so busy because I have to make more money. And all of a sudden we realize that even though we want God in control, our heart turns to money if we're not careful. Additionally, the same is true of the coal mine of us, is that there's nearly an unlimited amount of fuel. The reason this fire has been burning for so long is because 95% of all the coal in America is made in Pennsylvania. Or it's found or dug up, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, but it comes from Pennsylvania, where this fire is. And because of that, there is so much coal in there that this is going to burn for years and years to come. Our kids are going to watch this thing burn. Our grandkids are going to watch this thing burn. Because there's so much fuel. Mark chapter 10, Jesus tells this story. Chapter 10, verses 17 through 27, Jesus tells the story of a man who needs a little help with Jesus. A rich young man. It says this. And as he was setting out on his journey, that's Jesus, a man ran up and knelt before him and asked, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus said to him, "Why do you call me good? No one is good except for God alone. You know the commandments. Do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not bear false witness, do not defraud, honor your father and mother." And he said to him, "Teacher, all these things I have kept from my youth." And Jesus, looking at him, loved him and said to him, "You lack one thing. Go, sell all that you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Come, follow me." Disheartened by the saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had a great possessions. And Jesus looked around and said to his disciples, how difficult it will be for those who have wealth to enter the kingdom of heaven. And the disciples were amazed at his words. But Jesus said to them again, "Children, how difficult is it to enter the kingdom of heaven? It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven." And they were exceedingly astonished and said to him, "Then who can be saved?" Jesus looked at them and said, "With man it is impossible, but not with God, for all things are possible with God." Jesus sees this man and he sees that he does these things and he says, "Yes, I followed all the rules. I've done all the things that you've asked." And Jesus sees and has compassion on the inner parts of his heart. And he says, "Sell it. Your wealth is what prevents you. Sell it." And the guy leaves sorrowful because he's not willing to trade earthly treasures for heavenly treasures. And that's a hard moment. That's a powerful moment because if we're being honest with ourselves, giving up the lifestyle that we built becomes very difficult. Proverbs says that the eyes of a man are never satisfied. There's no limit to how much we will desire as people. One of the wealthiest people in the world, John Rockefeller, and if you go through history, he's one of the wealthiest that there was. And when asked how much he needed, how much money is enough money? You guys ever think that question? How much money is enough money? Do you know his answer? Just a little bit more. This man is one of the top 3 richest people in the world, or was one of the top 3 richest people in the world, and his wealth surpasses all understanding. He says, just a little bit more. You see, what we desire becomes what we want, obviously. And there's never an ending amount. When it comes to money, if we let money run our lives and we let money be our master, there's never an end to that race. There's always more. Bigger house, nicer car, more stuff, more money, more in the savings, more whatever it is. There's always more. That's when it becomes dangerous. That's when it settles into our hearts. It's said that a wise man should have money in his head, but never in his heart. The hardest part between following God and following money is that we need both on a daily basis. If we're being honest with ourselves, it's very easy to say, I would love that monk lifestyle. I would love not to have any money, and I would just love to be taken care of, and life is good, and we wouldn't have to worry about it. And that would be fantastic. But the reality is, we all need money on a daily basis. We need to pay bills. We need expenses, these things, this thing, that thing. There's a give and a take with money. So money should be a steward well thing with us. But it should never sink into our hearts. We should always use money as the tool that it is meant to be and not something above and beyond. In Matthew chapter 6, verse 24, Jesus says, you can't serve God and money. If money is your God, then you'll make God if money is your God, then you'll make God your servant to your money. And the inverse is also true. If God is our master, then money is our servant. It just comes down to who we trust more. You know, when I was in youth ministry one night, we were doing a trust fall exercise. You guys know the one where the person stands and then somebody else is behind them and you're supposed to catch them and the whole bit. And as we would do this exercise, we were talking about putting our trust in God. And as we would do this exercise, you would get all the range of students, right? You get the ones that would look back and keep looking back, and some would lean, some would stop, some would actually go for it very hesitantly. But I'll never forget, I had one student, he'd grown up in the youth ministry, and this kid would jump backwards. No hesitation. He just all in. And I asked him why he was all in, and he said, well, that's my best friend. And he knew that his best friend would always catch him. And so he just had no hesitation. He would jump and his friend would catch him. And that was just the way that they would go. And after a while, for whatever reason, I don't know if somebody got out of line or what happened, the combination shifted. And the boy who would jump backwards all the time, his best friend was no longer there to catch him. It was a boy he didn't know. And for whatever reason, because he always put his trust in his friend, he just jumped. The boy who was to catch him was not prepared for that. Because everybody else, they would be timid and they would lean slowly and you could just put a hand up and catch him. This kid jumped. And I don't know if he didn't know his friend was there or what the case may be, but they both hit the ground hard. And I had that moment, you know, that every youth pastor has, like, oh my goodness, are we going to the hospital? What are we doing? They were fine. Nothing a little soda couldn't fix. They were good to go. But they were furious at me. And they looked at me and they said, what happened? And they're blaming each other. The kid who fell or jumped backwards said, you didn't catch me. The kid who was going to catch said, why did you jump? And they're going back and forth. And I said, really what it comes down to is why or how did you put your trust in somebody else? And I think about that because the truth is we can't trust in God and money at the same time. That in truth, if we trust and believe in our money, then we don't trust and believe in God because God says he'll take care of it and we're trusting something outside of that. If we trust in God, then we don't believe that our money will take care of it. We believe God will take care of it and he'll use finances or whatever to make it work. But we can't believe and trust in both of them at the same time because they run counter to one another. So who do we trust in this morning? Do we trust in God or do we trust in money? And I know everybody sitting here this morning and those watching online, we want to trust in God, right? Go to church enough, you know that's the biblical answer, trust in God. But really, how many decisions do we make that are financially driven? How many times do we switch a job because it paid a little bit more? How many times do we say, well, the family needs a little bit more right now, so I'm going to work more overtime? How many times do we pick up an extra job here, an extra job there? How many times did we decide to move so we could save some money? How many times did we say, I couldn't possibly give more? I couldn't possibly give that much to the church because I couldn't afford whatever it is. High car payment, the high house payment, whatever it is. How many times did we say, I couldn't afford to take a Sabbath because I need to work that extra day? See, we want God to be our master, but we've become a slave to money sometimes. Because sometimes in our life, it just grows out of control, like a fire burning. But what if this morning, what if we flipped that? What if we decided that instead of letting money control our lives, what if we decided to change the way that we used our money? And listen, it doesn't matter how much you make. You can make a lot of money, you can make a little money. When Jesus says that it's harder for a wealthy man to enter heaven, he doesn't mean that you can't be wealthy and go to heaven. What he's saying is that money doesn't make you better. It becomes difficult to give it up. Our society's become obsessed with chasing money, more and more money. The world tells us hustle, grind, get more money, always. You're going to need more for retirement. You're going to need more for this. Everything costs more now. Housing costs more. Food costs more. Eggs cost more. I don't know if you guys have been to the grocery store. Everything costs more. We need to make more money. But somewhere along the line, we bought into the lie that money becomes the ultimate goal. See, we say, I need to make more money so I can do this. I need to make more money so the family can have this. So I can do this, or so that we can have something extra. And making money became the goal. Making money becomes the goal. But when we shift that, money becomes the tool that allows us to do what God has called us to do. That is to say that when money becomes our servant, we have money to fulfill what God is calling and asking of us at any given time. Not the other way around. Not to be so caught up that we need more and more so that we can do something. It's to shift it so that the money that we earn then becomes available for what God is asking. So when God says, hey, you should give more to somebody out on the streets, somebody in the church, something going on in the church, whatever that looks like, we have that funds available because we've stewarded well what God has given us. Because it no longer drives us to hold as much as possible. What drives us is to give away as much as possible while still being okay and redefining what okay looks like to us. You see, chasing money for our own desires is a terrible idea, and it never ends well. But chasing God and using our money to chase God always goes better than we planned. Again, not in the sense of I've made millions of dollars, or not in the sense of brand new cars, but in the sense of feeling and being complete and at peace. God gives that, not money. What's interesting is the man comes to Jesus, and there's multiple people that come to Jesus in the Bible, and they say, what am I supposed to do? I've kept the rules. I want what you're offering. How do I get there? And you know the prescription that Jesus gives unanimously to wealthy people in the Bible? Get rid of it. Jesus says, sell it. It's become your stumbling block. He says, instead of how much can you keep, how much can you give away? We see Zacchaeus in the Bible, who's known for collecting extra money. We see Nicodemus in the Bible, who's known for collecting money. And all of these times, there's this strong indication that Jesus says, give it. And some are willing to give it, and they make the remedy of taking money from being their master to Jesus being their master. They give it away because it no longer holds that power on them. And some, like the young man in Mark chapter 10, they can't make that choice. They can't give up what they've earned for giving back to God. You know, I get the question a lot, is making too much money wrong? I mean, no, more money causes more problems. You get more possibilities, more things. What money does is money amplifies what's already in our hearts. So, for instance, if you have shortcomings or impulse control issues or whatever's going on in our lives, then money amplifies that. Let me give you an example. If you have a drug habit, or if somebody has a drug habit, more money only makes that worse, right? Because now you have access to more things. If somebody has a spending control issue, more money doesn't help that, right? But if we have a heart for the Lord, if we structure our lives to focus on God, then more money only enables more focusing on God. But man, our heart is fickle. It's hard to stay focused on God. It's hard to continuously do what we know we should do. But the Bible says, he who is trusted with little is trusted with love. The Bible says the more that we work in our framework, the more God allows for more and more to grow that we can then give to him, enable for his kingdom. I've heard it put this way. Money amplifies your character. That is to say, it allows you to repeat your ingrained habits easily. If you like going out to eat and all of a sudden we have more money, then we go out to eat more often. Because why not? Whatever habits that we've built, money amplifies them and allows them to come easier. It doesn't make you more or less honorable. On the other hand, money money makes a generous person who doesn't automatically become stingy or greedy. It doesn't change our character, but it allows what's hidden to come out. And so this morning I wonder, which master do we serve? This morning I wonder, are we like the young man? Have we done everything that we can? Have we gone through the steps? Have we walked the walk and then come to Jesus and said, what's next? And realized that we put something before him. Have we been like the others? Have we come to Jesus and said, what do you need from me? And given everything, no matter what comes for him. You know, as the story continues and Jesus is talking to his disciples in Matthew chapter 6, Peter says, well, what about us? I left my family. I left everything for this. What does that make us? Right? And Jesus says this. Jesus says, no one who has left everything, here, but no one who has left everything for my sake will suffer in heaven. There's this understanding that because of what you've left here on earth, you amass treasures in heaven. Jesus says, where your heart is, there your treasure will also be. And when we place our hearts on Jesus and not on money, then no matter what our life looks like, no matter what comes and goes, no matter how much money flows or money doesn't flow, our hearts are set on something far better than what we have here. And this morning, I want to challenge us to rethink the way that we see our money. Because I know that I've been guilty of it. I know that it's a really easy temptation to say, well, just a little bit more. You know, the family wants a vacation. It's been a long time. We've been working really hard. Or I know that technically it's a day off, but there's stuff to do, and you got to do these things. It's been there. I know that it's very easy to fall into those temptations. Very easy to fall into that trap of just a little bit more, and then I'll take a break. Just a little bit more for this one thing, but I don't really need it, and so it's just this one thing, and then I'll get back on track. There is always one more thing. That when we let money control our lives, there's always one more thing we need to do. One more project around the house, one more vacation to take, one more bill that comes up, son, the car needs new tires. Whatever it is, Satan will keep us trapped in that, because when we focus on that, we no longer have the resources that God has given us to do what he has called us to do. And listen, every one of us has a calling from God. When God calls, we need to be ready for what he's called us to do. As I invite the worship team to come up, I want to close with this thought. We've been pretty far removed from the master-servant kind of mentality. Right? I think most of us would say that we're not a servant to anything. But when we think about it, when we think about our actions and the way that our actions impact who we are and how we live, I wonder if people looked at our lives, who would they say our master is? See, because the truth is, even if we don't use those terms, each and every one of us serves something or someone. And at different times in our lives, we serve different people, different things. Sometimes it's money. Sometimes it's a spouse. Put our family first. And listen, family first is important, but family first at the expense of everything else is not the same thing. Sometimes it's God. Sometimes it's the bills. Sometimes it's the new car. And we don't like to say it that way, but if we have to work extra to pay for the new car because we wanted the fancy thing or whatever that case may be, then it's become the new car. Sometimes it's the new house. Sometimes it's the 401k that we're trying to build. Sometimes it's the retirement package. Sometimes it's the next job that pays just 50 cents more. Whatever the case may be, at different points in our lives, we serve different masters. And this morning, I don't want to call it out. I don't want to have to raise our hand, nothing like that. But I want to take a moment and I want to reflect. Who do we serve? Who are you serving? Who am I serving? Again, not the church answer that we hope to be true, not the thing that we want to be true, but where are we at in life? Because listen, deceiving ourselves is just that. It's deceiving ourselves. God knows what's going on. Telling ourselves, oh, well, it's not really that, when it is, doesn't help anyone. But if we flip that, if we actually be honest, where are we at this morning? Because with honesty comes growth. With honesty and realizing where we are, and hopefully we're in a good place, but if we're not in a good place, either way, it tells us where we need to go, how to grow from there. Thinking about that this morning, would you pray with me? Heavenly Father, Lord, we know that we have a propensity to get caught up in the moment. We have a propensity to let things get out of control in our lives. Whether it's our money, our time, our focus, or we slowly get dragged away. And even when it starts off as something good, but even when it's something that's supposed to be for our good and for your good, but sometimes we spiral on those things. Sometimes we let that get out of control. And much like a mine fire or much like a forest fire, it just blows up out of proportion. And all of a sudden we find ourselves struggling. But Lord, this morning, no matter where each and every one of us are at, we want to make you the master of our lives. We want money to be a servant to you. We don't want it to have control over our lives. Lord, help us to steward well the resources that you've given us. Lord, to keep it in our heads and in our minds as something that we need to handle and need to do, but Lord, not to let it get into our hearts. Not to let it change the desires of our hearts. Lord, this week, help remind us that our hearts belong to you. Lord, we belong to you. And Lord, whether we've been doing a great job and we've been following you and using money well, or whether we've been struggling a little bit, Lord, meet us where we're at. Help us to just focus on you, to continue to grow with you. Lord, you've talked about money more in the Bible than you talked about heaven. But you knew it was an issue that we struggle with. That whether it's doing well or not doing well, we will always battle with money, day in and day out. But help us this week, Lord, to put it where it belongs, beneath you. In your name we pray. Amen. Well, if you are able, please stand and join us in a song of celebration this morning.